All right, I think we're live now.
It says it
All
in the
right.
top left corner. It must be so.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to another Bar Talk virtual chat with Dave Summers, Omaha Bar Association Executive Director. I'm here today with Geoff Thomas of Thomas & Thomas Court Reporters here in Omaha. And we are talking about a bunch of new stuff that's out there for practicing attorneys, the public. Everything right now is changing dynamically. And so we thought we'd get Geoff on the line to talk about this. Welcome, Geoff.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Happy to be here.
Now, I need to say a caveat before we begin any further. If there's any instability in the internet connection, I've already tested it. It is on my end. It is certainly not on Geoff's end of things. So the technology, if it fails, is on me and not you, Geoff. So
I
we'll start
appreciate the
with
caveat.
that. All right. Well, let's talk just in general. There's been some changes even this morning that the Douglas County Courthouse is now closed for general business. There's going to be some emergency exceptions being made, but generally everything's sort of closed. So business as usual is not taking place here locally. And so Geoff, you've been doing this actually for years. This is nothing new. Video conferencing for depositions, for a hearing. You've done those. You've had people remotely connected. Can you talk a bit about what you've done and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, we've done video conferencing. I've been at the office since 2012 or 11, and we've been doing video conferencing then. And my dad and mother had been doing it well before that. And so, technology has changed over time. But we've done trials, we've done depositions, we've done hearings. Pretty much any legal setting we've done via video conference, and obviously with the current state, we've been doing it a lot more.
Yeah. You're in a household, you have 3 children, you have a wife that's an attorney as well, and she's continuing to work. How are you all doing? How are your parents doing? How's everybody's health?
I think we're doing as well as we can. Obviously, it's a stressful time, but I think we're trying our best to make the most of it. Take the extra moments you have with your kids or at home or whatever, the downtime, and do something fun. Enjoy the moment, because everybody's struggling. We're definitely a little slower around the office, but hopefully we're all just in it together and keep smiling, and hopefully we get through this.
Well, and so I guess, and I don't practice. I just hear about how to practice these days. I'm not doing much work myself. Can you talk to us about the evidentiary standards allowing, video depositions and even, video testimony, live video testimony in hearings, and how
Yeah.
that works in Douglas County?
So generally speaking, video conferencing is allowed. As relates to the particulars, it either has to be, I believe it has to be stipulated, or you can get a court order to do it. And so in the current climate, what we're seeing is everybody's agreeing to stipulate to the fact that it can be done via video conference, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously if the court's okay with it, then we're going to go ahead and do it. So when we're, asking for permission, understanding that it's the best efforts right now, and so saying, oh, we can't do anything unless it's in person, that's not where we're at. That's not where the court's at. We need to be able to lean into this technology and use it to move the process forward.
Yeah, like all technology, when it's done correctly, it's a great tool, it's a great asset, and really there should be no reason why people can't do this in depositions, for trials, hearings. We've been doing work comp trials via video conference for quite some time, especially in situations where there's like the claimant's out in Scottsbluff, for example. The judges don't want to drive 8 hours, the attorneys don't want to drive 8 hours, spend 2 days for and travel time and expenses for a 2-hour trial. And so that's, I think kind of where we have started seeing hearings and trials take place, at least in the work comp court. And now obviously with the courts closing, it's going to be even more prevalent.
And so one of the things that you've done, which I think is really helpful, one of the things that you've offered, and I like this, is, when we're thinking back on depositions, okay, you have a written transcript, right? And that's, if you're doing an oral deposition, it's a written transcript. It's not the video-based one, but you've actually combined the two together, which is really helpful. I think when you're playing back evidence, they said it this way. You can you can also talk about inflection. You can show that emotion or lack of emotion at a certain point. That can be pretty useful for an attorney, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're referring to is like a synced videotape deposition where you meld the video and the transcript together. So obviously you need a court reporter, and then you need a video of the session or of the deposition. That can either be done via videographer. You could record the session like we're doing currently in Zoom. I will say the one or a couple caveats with that are, one, I'm not mic'd up like you would be with a videographer. You're not mic'd up with a lapel. Opposing counsel isn't, who's sitting, maybe a couple feet away from whatever mic you're speaking into. So there's the audio quality can be poor, as well as so far, knock on wood, the internet connection's been stable, but you can run into jarble or gargan or whatever, how you want to say it, where you sound like a robot. Obviously, you don't want that to be presented in court in front of the jury because they can't hear it. So that's one thing to be aware of. And then the other is, obviously, if your video cuts out and you're recording the session, now you've lost your video and you can't see anybody. So
yeah.
But the melding of the video and the transcript together is so helpful in whether you're preparing clips for mediation, doing actual editing for videos at trial, but then you also can play it back in with the streaming text, almost like a closed caption that allows you to, the juror to, or jury to focus, both see the video and see the text in case they can't hear it, or sometimes it's a doctor and they're hard to understand. You can at least follow along with the text as well.
So can you give us maybe a war story from what you've done in the past, or just a kind of a how it's worked in the court when you've done these sort of live remote testimonies and things like that? I mean, this has been used even locally, right? I mean, it's not just they're doing these in New York or they're doing them in some other jurisdiction. Like locally, we're already doing this stuff with your services, right?
Yep, we've helped attorneys have witnesses, experts testify at trial in the past, where we go into the courtroom, set up the equipment, make the connection with the far end, wherever it's, South Carolina, California, New York, wherever it is, and then conduct a remote testimony. And I will say, maybe this is a good time to point out, just generally, you always want to, sometimes you're stuck with what you have, and that's okay. But you want to invest in a webcam, you want to invest in a noise canceling speaker. Ideally, you're hardwired. What other? You want to test your connections with everybody. That's something we do all the time with our depositions. Is in addition to scheduling and finding connection, whether it's locally or nationwide. We always test with everybody. So one, they know that they're familiar with the platform. They know how to operate Zoom. They're comfortable that it doesn't take half an hour to get into the session at the time of the hearing or the deposition. So you're sitting around. But also that you jump on and you realize, oh, Steve's internet really isn't very good. We may want to think of a backup plan, or we want to maybe go a different route. So doing all of those things are obviously things we would do in a court setting. And as all war stories go, you can test, you can have the best equipment, you can do everything you can. But I've had instances where you do all of that, you're in court, everything's going great. And then all of a sudden, witness starts cutting out, can't understand them. The judge is like, well, isn't very happy opposing counsels, getting excited that your expert isn't going to be able to testify anymore. So you always want to have a backup plan. You always want to have a backup for your backup, and have those things in your pocket, because, like I said, even the best technology can go wrong.
We had earlier this week, or we posted it earlier this week, and it was, I think it was interviewed the week before with Judge Wheelock, who at the time was the only Douglas County District Court judge that wasn't on the bench physically. That he was doing this remotely, and he said, I'm extremely efficient with this video conferencing. It's working very well. Now, at the time, counsel, they were in the courtroom, right? They were in his chambers or what have you. They were physically in front of him in one screen, and he was the one that was remote. And now, if it's going to be Zoom screens, 3 or whatever screens all at once, but he was saying this is working fairly well for the motions that I'm getting. Certainly, criminal cases, there's a little bit to be lost there, but for the most part, the justice is not being misserved by this process. Certainly there's something to be said for when you have counsel in close quarters together talking, trying to work things out, but for the most part, when you're trying to get evidence on the record, when you're trying to make your arguments and have that visual to it, to make your case, it sounded like it was 2 thumbs up from Judge Wheelock. Have you had any feedback from the bench, from the judiciary, on their thoughts on how this works, or even from juries that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of take back to work comp, because that's a lot of the stuff we have done in the past. But like I said, once a judge figures out they don't have to travel, or once they see that it can work, and even with like Zoom, there is a shared desktop function that if I wanted to pull up some exhibits right now, I can have them preloaded on my laptop. I can, pull them up, start showing everybody. You can even highlight, do whatever you want, have everybody following along. So you can even, introduce evidence that way remotely, have everybody follow along, as opposed to, fumbling through pages saying, oh, what page are you on? Oh, I'm page 3. Well, is that base stamp 3, or is that the page 3 of the document? And so really, once they see that it works, like I said, you're always going to run into issues. It is what it is. But 99% of the time, it's a perfect way to do it. And we notice that even with depositions, where not all depositions can be done remotely. Sometimes they're just a witness. You really have to be there so you can, really twist their arm or whatever, or make sure no shenanigans are going on. But the people that we have do it love it. They and then change their practice to only doing that. They don't travel. Everybody loves it.
There's something we said, and this is maybe to take what could be sounding like, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and sort of taking a little bit of a step back and saying there can be ways to not use it properly. You talked about, not being mic'd up properly, or having the garble from bad internet connection, things like that. Maybe also, right now I'm staring not at the screen or at your face. Yep. I'm staring at the camera itself. Some sort of kind of not acting, but cues and things that you need to do. Talking with your hands if you can only see this much of your body. Maybe there's some theater aspect to how you use this in a way that's going to be helpful as well. Knowing that making a record and the actual facts are important, but also the presentation is also important, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's just it's what for example, it's why you do a videotape deposition a lot of times. One, it may be because you can't, the witness isn't available, but being able to see, okay, this guy is slimy, or he's evading my questions, or she's being real difficult, and I know if I have to do this in trial with her, it's going to be good for me because I can see it. Or hey, she's a great witness. I really don't want to see her in court. So having, and as all attorneys, all these trial attorneys are, it's all a show. Not that it's a show, but you put on the show. And being able to see somebody is different than just hearing them telephonically. And I think you're able to make an impression more when you're able to see somebody than when you're not.
Absolutely. I preach this too much, but email communication, certainly it's efficient. You can answer anytime, but things get lost in translation, right? And if you're on the phone, you can hear inflection, you can hear pauses, you can hear emotion somewhat, and then seeing is that ultimate level.
Absolutely.
So you guys are still open for business. You're still obviously doing the work. There's still work to be done. There's still hearings that can be done. So if they're looking for help, they should be reaching out to you, right?
Yeah, so our office is still open. Our reporters are still taking jobs. A lot of them are turning into being video conferencing.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hello.
I just wanted to wave and say hello.
It's great to see you. Hope you're doing well.
I am doing well because I've got Jeffrey.
Now I forget where I was, but
oh no, yeah, you guys are open for business.
Yeah, we're open for business. We're doing a lot of remote depositions, but something we've done is because we know really people have their hands tied. We're actually doing all of our local connections for free. Normally, we charge a nominal fee for the equipment, the setup, the testing, the session, and stuff. We have waived that fee during the coronavirus outbreak. And hopefully that's helpful to people that really have no other options but maybe to do it via video conference. So yeah, we're open, we're willing and able. I know yesterday the Nebraska Online Notary Public Act was passed by the governor. And yesterday we started our reporters on becoming certified and going through the application process so that we can take advantage of that as well. We're all in this together, and we're hoping to lend a hand as much as we can to make this as smooth as it can be in such a hard time.
We really appreciate that, and that's a great point you bring up about the online notary, right? Because that was going to be a hang-up for a lot of people. Well, yeah, I need to go into a bank or to a law office to get something notarized. So that's I'm glad that they're working on that. I'm glad that your reporters are getting up to speed on that so they can do that online notary. That's going to be huge going forward here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I know you got to get back to it, but we want to take a moment to just chat with you this morning. Appreciate it, Geoff, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep, I appreciate it, Dave.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.